Every generation of Pokemon brings something new to the table, all with huge effects that ripple through competitive play. In this video, we'll break down the most impactful additions from each generation. Gen 1 was it all began. The mechanics then were a lot different from what they were now. For instance, critical hits were based on speed, meaning the faster your mon, the higher the crit chance. Furthermore, special was just one singular stat, and trapping moves made your Pokemon unable to move. You also needed a turn to wake up your sleeping Pokemon. However, some other core concepts, like types, stats, move pool, originated here. It continued to create the crux of the competitive scene. This generation planted the seeds of competitive battling that will only grow deeper with each generation. Generation 2 introduced held items. Leftovers was by far the most spammed item, since other staples like the various choice items didn't exist yet. However, this would mean that every Pokemon has significantly more longevity now, especially Pokemon utilizing rest and sleep talk. This generation also introduced Dark and Steel types and split the special stat to nerf the Psychic types. Spikes also came to existence this generation, and this was a huge deal. Spikes introduced the idea of punishing switches, which encouraged aggressive play. We even had Weather introduced this generation. However, this would not become prominent until the next generation. If Gen 2 set the base for modern competitive Pokemon, Gen 3 was the standard. The introduction of abilities was a shift into the modern generations. Suddenly, every Pokemon had a passive effect that could influence battle flow. Levitate made it so that Gengar, rather than fearing Earthquake, welcomed the idea of switching onto one. Natural Cure made the bulky behemoths Lissy and Celebi unafraid of status, as all they had to do was switch out to cure themselves. Magnuson and Dugtrio, formerly unremarkable, were now a genuine OU Pokemon because of their trapping capabilities. EVs and IVs were also fully formalized this generation, allowing players to customize stats to exact speed creep or damage calc they needed. This also meant that the game became more offensive as Pokemon could no longer max out their bulk without trading off another stat boost. Gen 4 brought out the arguably biggest changes to competitive Pokemon. First was the physical special split. Before this gen, the typing of a move decided whether it was physical or special. This meant that all water moves were special, even the ones like Warfell, and all ghost moves were physical, even though most ghosts had better special attack. The split allowed moves to finally reflect their actual contact nature. Suddenly, Gyarados could effectively fire off a stab waterfall boosted by Dragon Dance, and Tyranitar could be even better at pursuit trapping. On top of that, Gen 4 introduced Stealth Rock, the most influential hazard in the history of the game. It punishes switches even more than Spikes. It shaped viability around type weaknesses, with many flying types falling to the wayside. Gen 5 was extremely kind in dishing out huge power creep, partially due to the hidden abilities. These gave many Pokemon entirely new forms or transformed them from forgettable into meta staples. Speed Boost turned Blaziken from Dollar Store Infernape to terrifying Uber level threat. Politoed became extremely feared when backed by the various rain abusers. Berlin was now able to circumvent its speed issue with a terrifying Technician Knock Punch, and it absolutely pulverized slower targets with Bullet Seed. But it also introduced Team Preview, giving players insight into matchups before turn 1, and they could choose what lead they wanted rather than be forced into one. Now, the first truly marketed generational mechanic was Mega Evolution in Gen 6. These forms gave certain Pokemon massive stat boosts, and often a new ability or typing, permanently redefining their role. Mega Mawile, with huge power, went from a horrible Pokemon to a monster of one. Kangaskhan gained the second hit via Parental Bond and shattered the tier until the balance hit. Mega Beedrill finally had some genuine competitive use with a huge stat overhaul and adaptability. Sticky Web was also introduced, enabling entire teams built around speed control and allowing not so fast Pokemon to be genuinely terrifying, like Mega Gardevoir. Steel types were also changed to no longer resist Ghost and Dark types, but were buffed through the newly created Fairy types. Fairy types helped counter the immense chaos caused by the former best type, Dragon. However, this would soon backfire as Fairy now became the best type. With Megas already shaking up the scene, Gen 7 pushed boundaries with Z moves, a one-time nuke that turns into any move as a supercharged version. Gyarados could now nuke something with an instant supercharged bounce. Heatran turned its already strong Magma Storm into an Inferno Overdrive that could shatter almost anything. The impact was immediate. Now any Pokemon could threaten a KO on a predicted switch or turn a passive setup into an instant win con. Unlike Megas, Z moves were accessible to everyone, so matchup knowledge, timing, and prediction mattered more than ever, as defensive Pokemon had to respect potential offensive bursts. Gen 8 introduced Dynamax, perhaps the most controversial mechanic since the game began. At first glance, it seemed fun. A Pokemon becomes giant, gets double HP, and their moves turn to max moves with secondary effects. In practice, it was a nightmare for competitive singles. Unlike Megas or Z moves, there were no item restrictions and typing limits. Dynamax broke the balance of prediction counterplay. A set of Sweeper could instantaneously get out of control of Max Airstream. It was banned from Smogon formats within months. Heavy duty boots also had come into existence, which finally gave some rock weak Pokemon a chance, and made many tanks even more frustrated to deal with. Finally, we reached Gen 9 with a signature mechanic, Terrestrialization, which lets a Pokemon change its typing mid-battle. Offensively, this means an extra stab boost or coverage option. Defensively, it can eliminate a crippling weakness or throw off a would-be counter. The unpredictability is both a feature and a flaw. Some argue that this adds rich layers of mind games, others call it unhealthy. In Gen 9's meta, Terra has defined the rise and fall of many threats. Whether it's Terra Water Garganacl tanking everything, or Terra Ice Regieleki bypassing coverage issues. It is still quite the controversial mechanic, but one thing is very clear. Terra has made every battle feel like anything can happen. Terra as a mechanic is so insane that it resulted in Pokemon like Volcarona and Regieleki, Pokemon who were fine in OU before, become broken and banned to Uber tiers. But as you can see, competitive Pokemon is a dynamic game which has been evolving for over 25 years now. We went from Generation 1 where normal Psychics dominated, to Generation 5 with its Dragon and Fighting types, to the modern generation, with the dominant Dark, Ghost, and Fairy types. However, if you're interested in playing past generations, you can always check the ruins of Alph Room and Showdown, or the forum on Smogon. In fact, the Retro WCop of Pokemon signups are live, with them ending by the 17th of August. If you're interested in representing your country in past Gen OU metas and potentially win yourself a custom avatar, I highly recommend giving it a go. The link will be in the description below.